Part 2, Good versus Evil. Right and wrong are objective. This is a good point in the presentation series to mention a point of honesty. I did say in the preface that I'm not pushing a religious or dogmatic agenda, or asking you to take anything on faith or believe any stories. I do, however, hope to change your mind on some things. My aim is to persuade you to think differently. My personal assertion is that the current dark age of humanity is a crisis of perception. My method is to lead you down a possible logical thought process where one idea builds the foundation for the next. Not through trickery or subtle word magic, but through plain language, discovery, new ideas, and perspectives. You choose what to decide. Part of my personal life struggle has been to reclaim my spirituality, my connection to the all. This involves coming back to my childhood understandings, yet now with the knowledge and experience of a grown-up perspective. I suspect that many listening will empathize with this process. I think, as young children, we are closer to the unconscious mind, or the universal mind. Evil is defined as the fact of suffering, misfortune, or wrongdoing. A morally bad or wrong, causing injury, pain, or harm. A cosmic evil force. The threat of impending violence. It's a pretty simple thing. Evil just means basically causing harm. One differentiation to make, though. I would not consider an act of nature, like a volcano or a lion killing a zebra, evil. When I'm using the word, what I mean is from the point of view of the human. We have to look at nature in a different way because its intelligence is very different than ours. Let's give that some thought. What is God? The force of good? Whatever exists is good. Evil exists. Is that good? Good is a human way of describing and understanding the wonderful force all around us that gives opportunity for new life. Yet there is destruction in that process as well. The natural processes of nature do not have that one valuable thing we discussed so much in part 1, the choice. But how about the word God? Does this word mean anything outside of the temples and religious structures? It really does not make sense logically, or in an intuitive sense, that there's no intelligence behind the design of this reality that we're experiencing. It's so multifaceted and dimensional, simple and complex at the same time. The problem, in my experience, is that many folks I speak with have had some major break, losing their religion, or finding the light. And oftentimes, some experience at a young age traumatized their spiritual self. Many choose to ignore the higher or the deeper self, the part that is connected, as pictured in the tree of life motif, to the source, the all, the universe, the cosmos, the great spirit, the divine, the ultimate, or the universal consciousness, the great architect. Many names for the same thing. Point being, as I stated earlier, I'm not religious or pushing a religious agenda, but I'd be a fool to say there's no God. The fabric of reality is made of something and nothing and everything. What can we call that? Maybe we can agree on the great intelligence. Sometimes, using different combination of words, we can accomplish understanding through comparison. What is nonsensical to me is to personify this all-encompassing power, as religions try to do, into like a man. What is it? I'm going to try to let someone maybe who can speak a little bit more eloquently on the subject than myself, and I've chosen a man named Alan Watts. Let's see what Alan Watts has to say on this subject.
I tell you, I knew a monk who started out in life as pretty much of an agnostic or an atheist, and then he began to read Henri Bergson, the French philosopher who proclaimed the vital force, the élan vital, and so on. And the more he read into this kind of philosophy, the more he saw that these people were really talking about God. And I've read a great deal of theological reasoning about the existence of God, and they all start out on this line. If you are intelligent and reasonable, you cannot be the product of a mechanical and meaningless universe. Figs do not grow on thistles. Grapes do not grow on thorns. And therefore, you, as an expression of the universe, as an aperture through which the universe is observing itself, cannot be a mere fluke. Because if this world peoples, as a tree brings forth fruit, then the universe itself, the energy which underlies it, what it's all about, the ground of being, as Paul Tillich called it, must be intelligent. Now, when you come...
Alan Watts is an author and a speaker who studied the Eastern religions such as Buddhism. He combines ideas and philosophies from the East with his upbringings in Western Christian beliefs, and forms a more complete picture of spirituality that is not tied directly to one system of dogma, but based on the parts that make sense and ring true from each. Now we're going to dig a little bit into the world of the esoteric. This is from a book called The Rosicrucian Cosmoconception. Consider the wisdom manifested in the construction of the heart, and then question if this superb mechanism deserves to be despised. The wise man is grateful for his dense body and takes the best possible care of it, because he knows that it is the most valuable of his present instruments. This is a book by Max Hendel. I don't know much about him, but he did write A Sane Mind, a Soft Heart, and a Sound Body. The Trinity there is displayed, mind, heart, body. Just something that keeps coming up in my studies, whether it be occult or on my own thinking, connecting the higher self to the mind and then to the grounded body. The purpose of man's evolution here is to enable him to find his focus in the physical world, where at present the light of wisdom seems obscured. But when in time we have found the light, the wisdom of man will shine forth in his actions and far surpass the wisdom expressed by the group spirit of the animal. So the light of wisdom reminds me of the value of life, something we discussed in part 1. The wisdom of construction is discussing this amazing body we have, which we also discussed. So this ties in now to this idea that we should respect this amazing body we have. It's our best tool. The last line stuck out in my mind. I've been pondering the idea ever since I read it. The wisdom expressed by the group spirit of the animal. This book has offered me an entirely different point of view than I had previously been exposed to. The concept expressed here is that based on the last presentation, the value of human life assumes that there is some purpose behind such magnificent design. This implies a certain responsibility to find the light, or seek the greater good, or an understanding of the greater God. So I want to get back to what I was just talking about, the group spirit of the animal. But first I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Rosicrucian, which is, this book is from a member of the Rosicrucian order. The Rosicrucian movement has roots far back to Egyptian times at least. It is what's known as one of the mystery schools. Another way to think about occult or esoteric groups that hold knowledge, the way football teams save plays and gather players. These groups garner strength and power by holding secret knowledge. Remember, we talked about the importance of philosophy. Not necessarily good or evil in itself, the order that is, but the knowledge that is not often made available, I find more appealing. The idea of this group spirit is hard to resist when you consider the technical proficiency described. How are these creatures so precise in their sciences? It cannot be luck, but some intelligence. And wisdom is such a wonderfully descriptive word for this deepened knowledge that somehow stays current with every passing moment and shift in the winds and planets. Here's the part from the book. It is the spirit of the group which gathers its flocks of birds in the fall and compels them to migrate to the south, neither too early nor too late to escape the winter's chilly blast, that directs their return in the spring, causing them to fly at just the proper altitude, which differs for the different species. The group spirit of the beaver teaches it to build its dam across a stream at exactly the proper angle. It considers the rapidity of the flow and all the circumstances, precisely as a skilled engineer would do, showing that it is as up-to-date in every particular of the craft as the college-bred, technically educated man. It is the wisdom of the group spirit that directs the building of the hexagon cell of the bee with such geometrical nicety, that teaches the snail to fashion its house in an accurate, beautiful spiral, that teaches the ocean mollusk the art of decorating its iridescent shell. Wisdom, wisdom everywhere, so grand, so great, that one who looks with an observant eye is filled with amazement and reverence. So this also puts into perspective what Alan Watt was saying about how could we get something less intelligent? How could we get something so beautiful, amazing, and intelligent from something less intelligent, a random act? In other words, the fruit does not grow from the thorn. So I grew up heavily immersed in the Christian church. My father was a preacher, and as hard as it was for me when I became an adult to say, I no longer want to call myself a Christian because of all the dogma and the stories related to Christianity and some of the bad sides of religion, but I don't want to throw away every part of it. So this is why I picked out 1 Corinthians 13. To me, this piece of wisdom should not be ignored. It is one of the most important pieces of wisdom I've ever come across. And the basic tenet for me is love is patience. Patience is a much better description of what love really is than most things we think of. But let me read the whole passage here, starting with verse 4. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And the next line actually says, love never ends. Now you can substitute the word love for care, and it basically means the same thing. And notice, patience is the first virtue mentioned in this passage. I used this passage in my wedding vows, and I think it's a pretty good description of the moral path. Patience, kindness, no envy, no self-possessed behavior, which is very similar to saying no solipsism. It goes beyond just an ego-driven action to thinking that you are the center of everything. The idea of honoring others and honoring life, not bragging, because bragging often becomes a way of putting other people's down, which is harmful. Not getting angry without justification or good reason. Not keeping a scorecard of wrongs in order to one up the other. Love rejoices with the truth. That's a joyful thing. And then the last few tenets are especially important. Protects, trusts, hopes, endures. These are some of the more difficult aspects of love or good. To protect life, to endure through difficulties. So this slide is kind of the most simple way I could come up with to wrap all this up into a few lines. A right is an action which does not cause harm. Stealing is wrong. Evil is the destruction of what life creates. Lying is a destructive form of stealing truth. Good is always in alignment with truth. So these are seem pretty basic and simple things to say, but not very commonly known or used as guidelines for decisions, not taught in school. Imagine if our courtrooms and political spheres were governed by this set of rules, instead of the mumbo-jumbo, confusing mess they call laws. Good and evil should be really simple. The crucial key for understanding our world is to understand the nature of evil. Evil challenges the value of people by denying them the opportunity to make their own choices, by denying them the chance to grow strong in learning and understanding. I suspect for many the idea that evil is a thing that has a nature is a hard concept to swallow. The reason for this is we are only used to hearing the term in relation to a religious situation like a demon or the devil. The idea here, which is Hollywood thinking, the idea here is to begin to think of evil more like a force, like wind or gravity, or sickness. Sickness is not a good thing for us as a human in our individual experience, but in the bigger picture scheme of things, it's a crucial part of the process of balance that goes on in reality. Evil's much the same way. From the perspective of us humans, it's something scary we need to deal with and eradicate. But from the point of view of the entire universe, evil is something that manifests when beings try to separate from the continuity of life. It's an evening out process. Leave your bread outside, it gets hard and moldy. Ignore your friends, and they go away. Steal from others, and you encourage evil into your community. Bad things will happen. Stealing opportunity and the ability to grow strong in learning is what has been done to early American slaves, to Jewish people in Germany, like we discussed in World War II. In modern times, in our lives, the robbery is done subtly on all levels of daily life. Debt slavery, dampened creativity because of repetition of false ideals, pictures and stories of lying and deceitful deeds as if they're funny and we should laugh at them. Well, we should be laughing at them, but understanding what we're laughing at is the key.
Comes straight out of like 1950s Marxism, and you know it's pretty much permeated the humanities and the study of literature at universities all over North America. It's sick beyond belief to teach young people that all meaning is relative. It's the last thing you guys need to hear when you're like 20. And the reason that people teach it is because they're more afraid that things might have meaning than they are afraid that things might not. Because you might ask yourself, well, here's two options. One is, it doesn't bloody well matter what you do. Who the hell cares? Who's going to know in 1,000 years? And everything's relative. Well, you think, God, nothing could be worse than that. Well, I can tell you something that would be worse than that. It's easy. Let's take the reverse. Everything you do matters. Okay, so what's the downside of that? It's like you don't get to get away with anything. Everything you do is important. It's linked to everything else. It's like, okay, now choose. You got a choice. You can either choose to believe, nihilistically, that nothing has any meaning. Well, you get to be depressed and anxious, and maybe you're impulsive because that's the only kind of pleasure you can find. But the advantage is, you don't have any responsibility. You can do whatever you want. And if a psychoanalyst would say, maybe that's why you believe it. That's a secondary gain, right? You think you believe it because you've derived it logically. It's like, yeah, sure. No. You believe it because it's in the best interest of the worst aspects of you to believe it. Because it justifies sloth and cynicism. While the opposite is, yeah, what you do matters. It's like, well, why not believe that? Well, try believing it seriously and see what happens. You take the existential claim seriously. One of them is, you make a mistake, especially one that you know is a mistake, you will absolutely pay for it. And worse, that you'll never get away with it. And worse than that, it'll domino out into the world. So not only will you pay for it, but the people that you're connected with will pay for it. There's always a price. It's like, well, you decide which of those two things is more terrifying.
This is going to be difficult for many people to swallow. I'm not trying to say that you're a Satanist if you don't believe in God. However, if you call yourself an atheist, you're indeed aligning yourself with the very same ideology that is employed in Satanism. Often people think of Satanism as a cult, which actually only means hidden. Look up the definition of Satanism as described by the founder of this cult. It is the belief that you are God and that you can choose what morality is. Right and wrong are only in your mind, and you can adjust them to fit your whims and desires. That's Anton LaVey's teaching. By default, this ideology of most Americans has become common because most people are just buying what's on TV and movies rather than thinking for themselves. And that what they're buying into is pure Satanism. Let's read right from the website, right here on their facts, fundamental beliefs. Why do Satanists worship the devil? Answer: we don't. Satanists are atheists. We see the universe as being indifferent to us. And so, all morals and values are subjective human constructions. Our position is to be self-centered, with ourselves being the most important person, the God of our subjective universe. So, we are sometimes said to worship ourselves. Our current high priest, Gilmore, calls this the step moving from being an atheist to being an I-theist. Satan, to us, is a symbol of pride, liberty, and individualism. And it serves an external, metaphorical projection of our highest personal potential. We do not believe in Satan as a being or a person. Worship of the self is believing that you are God. Satanism is atheism. As I described earlier, good is essentially being in alignment with nature. In practical terms, that means not harming others. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Balance and harmony are a natural state, and when there's no stealing or coercion going on, that's what's there. This is evident when you take a walk on the beach or in nature. Everything is perfect just as it should be. The natural environment is self-healing and self-sustaining, just like the workings of our bodies that we discussed in the value section. Even if you drop a bomb and destroy everything, come back in 20 years and life will be there, putting things back together, working towards balance, growing roots and leaves. Before we leave this section and go on to the next, a quote from Albert Schweitzer. Man must cease attributing his problems to his environment and learn again to exercise his will, his personal responsibility in the realm of faith and morals. So often in modern news cycles, the fear is instilled in humans that nature's out to get us. The storms, the weather, the impending earthquake. How much of our evil lifestyle is reflected back on us? It makes sense that the world is in peril because we are not proactively working to keep it safe. More bombs and coercion will never result in more peace. I would propose that by becoming deacons of the earth, caretakers of nature, humans will find their place on this planet. When we are concerned as much about the safety and well-being of other humans and other life on this planet, we will finally find some safety ourselves.